This
platforms.
conference will now be recorded.
Well, thank you so much for joining today. We're going to talk about security at TPX, and really, how do you start the conversation about security when you might not be a security expert? And the reason we're here is the reality that security, it's hot. It's up and to the right. And it's hot and it's on fire because of all the security activity that's happening out there. There's so many attacks continuously. And the reason there are these attacks is because of the money. Frankly, these attacks are done by a sort of modern era pirate that they're essentially capitalists who are trying to take advantage of security concerns or security vulnerabilities and then lock people out of their data. And so you don't have to spend a lot of time focusing on fear and uncertainty or doubt. That isn't necessary anymore, because every one of us has heard in the news or experienced ourselves the challenges that occurs with ransomware, the fact that it's affected the fabric of our lives, whether it's our inability to get gasoline, effect to our bacon, literally getting bacon from JBS, who's one of the largest meat processors. Ransomware is just a daily occurrence. And so before we even get into how do you sell security, it's just understanding that first and foremost, everybody more or less has one security solution in play, regardless of the size of the organization, regardless of their security maturity. They're running antivirus and they think it makes them secure. They think they're okay, and they're not. Antivirus does absolutely nothing. It's a wet noodle in protecting against ransomware. The second thing is that you and I, the user, is literally the weakest link. They are inviting malware into the network. They're inviting the threat into the network. And so if organizations don't focus on getting people smarter, they're just sitting ducks. And then the third thing that I think is so very important is that to get security, you don't necessarily need to get secure, I should say, and achieve that outcome. You don't necessarily need to go buy a ton of new security technologies. Frankly, it's about having one or two new security technologies, improving the hygiene of how you operationalize, maintain that, make sure it's being used properly, and ultimately probably improve some old processes within the organization. But let's go a little bit deeper. Why do we say antivirus doesn't mean you're secure? We've all bought cars. And I'm going to take you through a metaphor of how you really understand security without having to understand security technology. And I'm going to use cars. You see, car security has been a big issue. You know, that's Volvo's thing back in the 60s and 70s. Security and protecting the passengers has always been important. Security 20 years ago, this is actually the security category of the Ford Focus 20 years ago. And what they talk about is airbags. Well, likely airbag, one in the front for the passenger and one for the driver, sitting right smack in front of them. They talk about the potentially having a side impact airbag, and then moving off of there, hey, we've got ABS, so you got anti-lock braking. But if you notice it and you keep on going down there, you see it then gets into child safety door locks. That's security back 20 years ago. If we look at security in cars today, it's insanely different. It's so much more modern. You know, we've got all these different acronyms associated with different computing systems that stop in the car when you're backing it up before you hit something, beeping at you with every sound known to man. You got different things that are keeping you from weaving in and out of lanes where you just kind of like graze on over, it brings you back. You got cars that do different levels of autonomous driving, braking for you. Then you've got all fancy types of protection associated with the power that goes to wheels as soon as wheels look like they're losing their traction. There are so many levels of security within a car nowadays. And we would be crazy to go down to the Ford dealership today and say, hey, I want that modern 2021 Mustang, but give me the security features of that 2001 Mustang. Nobody wants that. That's not going to keep us safe. Well, the same thing's true with technology and securing your computers. Endpoint security. What we were really worried about way back in 2001 is this virus called Love Letter, where there was an attachment to an email, and that attachment usually said, I love you, and you click on it and it opens up this worm and vulnerability, and it would spread and cause all kind of havoc to networks, taking networks down. Nobody made money on this. It was just a virus. Security today is about money. Security today, and the weakness that people have, is protecting against someone locking out your computer, encrypting all the files, making it so that you don't have access to it. And if you don't send money within the time allotted in a clock, they'll start releasing that information to the wild, basically out on the internet. It is a far cry from an I love you email. So the security world has changed. And you, when you work with the different customers that you're speaking to, you don't have to be an expert. You just have to realize that this isn't a hack that's important from your perspective. It's the effect to business, and that business can be affected and is affected every single day through ransomware, where people don't have access to anything. And unfortunately, they're using security solutions that are really designed to protect against an I love you letter. That's one thing. The second thing is, as I mentioned, we're the weakest link. Every one of us are familiar with the Prince of Nigeria, or the Prince of in this case, Libya, who is saying, hey, I've got all this money that I need to get out of the country, and if you give me your bank account where I can place that money in there, I'll give you a cut. This is what we used to have to worry about from a phishing perspective. Your users needed to know, don't give out their account. But now they've got to figure out which of these two logins is real. They need to be able to identify a fake authentication for Google or Bank of America just in the midst of getting an email that says, your account has been hacked, reset your password. They click on that and they go to one of these screens. Can you tell which is authentic and which is not? It's hard. And it's hard for someone who is in the security realm. But we want users to think before they click. We don't want them to get to the point where they have to go, oh, geez, which of these two screens is real? Or better yet, is this an authentic authentication screen? We want them to recognize the email that comes in is not authentic. Now, just for your knowledge, in this scenario, what you got going on here, the one on the left is not the authentic. It is inauthentic. First and foremost, it's using old Google icons and font. That's always a telltale. They'll create the phishing authentication screen, and they'll create it once, and they just try to keep reusing it until it doesn't work anymore. The second thing that you note here is that Google will never ask for your username or email and password on the same authentication screen. And then the third thing is some of the icons in there are features in Google that no longer even exist, like Google+. What we need to do, and the way that you can help your customers be more secure, is making their users where they're consciously competent. The reality is most of everybody here, we're all either unconsciously incompetent or consciously incompetent. I don't know how bad I am at this, or I know I'm really bad at this. But we need them to get them at the stage of, I know there's these things I need to think about before doing. and ultimately to the, I don't even have to think about it, I just know. Michael Jordan shooting a free throw, unconsciously confident. Me at the driving range, unconsciously incompetent. Frankly, I'm getting to the point of being consciously incompetent. We know at TPX that if we get our users smarter, if we keep security top of mind to them, it makes them better. It makes the organization more secure. Frankly, you know it as well. Because how many of us are well aware of the training that we have to give to our children, as an example, on what they need to do to secure the house? Making sure the doors are locked, making sure that the lights are off or on. If you're home, when you're making sure that you bring in the mail, make sure that you have your kids are doing the activities that you need to do, like don't leave the door wide open, darn it. Securing the computers and systems for small businesses and medium businesses is the exact same as securing your home. Now, unfortunately, our users, just like our kids, they've got the forgotten curve, which means basically within 1 hour of being told something, we'll forget 50% of the information, which means likely you'll remember at best half of what I'm talking about today. But we know if we repeat it, and if we repeat it enough times, the amount of information will be maintained, or I should say retained, and the important content able to be applied. And that's why when we look at security awareness training, we really focus on people understanding the repetition necessity, that it is through having, let's say, a 3 to 5 minute TikTok style training session each month that's on demand so that users can use it when they have time to use it. We do 3 phishing exercises each month so that users are applying the information that they're learning, they're getting smarter, and they're protecting the company by not inviting malware into the organization. So what are the next steps from this is, geez, that's great and all. And what I've highlighted here are really two areas, if you will, of why security is important and how organizations can become more secure. But starting the conversation can be difficult. It can seem overwhelming. You might not feel like you have the expertise. And so we at TPX, we've created a great conversation starter. It's a ransomware evaluation. This is where we get on the phone with the customer, and you're welcome to be on the phone with us. We walk through 12 best practices, 12 areas associated with security protections, security processes, and security activity policy that organizations need to follow. And we provide them a heat map that shows where their threats are. It's free. And for so many of our organizations, this gives them the visibility of where to get started. What are my risks associated with my user population? What are my risks associated with my perimeter environment or my endpoint environment? This gives them that visibility, gives them the ability to communicate upwards in the organization to show, here's our risk, here's our threats, this is what we need, why we need budget for cybersecurity. So with that, I'll pause and see, do you have any questions associated with how do I get this conversation started, or why is cybersecurity such a big deal right now? And I can't see the questions, by the way.
I don't see anything in the chat at the moment.
Okay.
This might have been your next slide, but what about some of the solutions that you offer for small business or even bigger enterprise customers?
Sure. Yeah. And we have solutions that are all tied to managed services to help organizations with having a secure perimeter, a secure endpoint, and a secure backup environment. For a lot of companies, they don't know where to get started. And so that's why we say, start here. For a lot of our channel partners, our agents, they're not experts in security. And so we don't want to put them in a position where they're trying to talk through our managed firewall solution our managed endpoint solution, or our managed backup solution. So what we want to do is enable you to start the conversation. And that's one of the reasons we highlight the free ransomware evaluation, because it lets a conversation starter. We also want you to feel comfortable talking about the security challenges that are happening every day in the news, and why it's important that organizations are not keeping their head in the sand, and that they have a program, an approach that's defensible with it. And we're happy to go into greater detail on our security solutions, whether it is our managed firewall solution, our managed endpoint solution, our managed backup solution, as well as our security awareness training piece. And we can go into greater detail, which would be in itself a good 25-minute solution set. In addition, we can provide over to you all the slides and briefs on each of those solutions. We'll also provide the ransomware evaluation brief that you can leave behind with your customers as well. The reason that we focus on those solutions, that we focus on managed perimeter, managed endpoint, as well as the managed backup, is because that's the three key ways that an organization, the key vectors an organization is vulnerable to ransomware. It's from remote services where somebody's connecting into the network remotely. It's from phishing. Just shy of 30% of all ransomware attacks stem from a phishing email. And it's from a web application, like a banking application that is remotely accessed, that is published on the web, being taken advantage of. Those are the three areas. So through managing the perimeter and having a secure perimeter outcome, having a secure endpoint outcome, securing or having a secure backup solution so that if something happens, you can restore properly, and having your users where they don't introduce the malware, that's how you get protected. So, well, let me leave you with one last thing, which is your competitor, when we're talking, or not yours, our competitors, when we talk with customers about security, our competitors is doing nothing. That is our biggest competitor, because it's easier for an organization to do nothing. They can continue to go down the path they're going down because their pain has not been felt yet. If they haven't been ransomed, it's just something that they're kind of worried about, but they don't feel the pain yet. And so when you talk about security and you're talking about that with customers, recognize this big competition is really with doing nothing. And for our customers, doing nothing is just like leaving your wallet on the sidewalk and walking away. Because the ransomware attacks are all driven by money, and they're not going to stop because it's easy money. And so if organizations aren't protecting, well, they're just leaving their money in the ether to be taken by the malicious attackers. With that, I'll close out the webinar today. We'll send over the information for you so that you have information on our free ransomware evaluation, as well as our managed services, including managed firewall and endpoint, as well as our managed backup solutions and security awareness training. As always, we're readily available to talk through the opportunities with you and be a partner in going to market. We at TPX recognize that security, it's not something that people have figured out and that they need help with it, and we make it easy to do so. Thank you so much. Hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Jonathan. That was really great.
Awesome.
Did we have any other questions now that we've stopped the recording?
You stopped the recording, right, Sujan?
Yeah.